So namaste again to everyone and welcome to our satsang this morning. Happy as always that all of you have joined with us. This is will be the last satsang for Nirvana Shatkam. This is the ninth discussion we are having on this very beautiful poem of Sri Shankara. We started in June, and I'm very grateful that I have had this opportunity to study and to teach this composition with you. So my intention today is to offer a few summary thoughts about the poem, lifting up some of the central insights that we have learned. And then I'll leave a little time at the end. Perhaps, if you have, I would like to hear from you what insights of this, what teachings of this poem do you think you would keep with you, you would carry with you? What insights were of particular significance to you? So we celebrated Diwali yesterday, the celebration of light, of Jyotihi. And so I thought that I will begin this morning with this theme of light and Jyotihi as we review our discussion of Nirvana Shatkam. In my collection of the works of Shankara, I have a discussion between a teacher and his student, a dialogue which proceeds on the basis of questions and answers, and I think gives a very precise and beautiful summary of what we have been studying. So I want to begin with this dialogue. It is an anonymous dialogue. I don't know who is the teacher here and who is the student, but it has come down to us in this oral tradition. So the teacher begins by asking his student a question. Kim Jyoti Tava? What is the light by which you see? What is light for you? Kim means what? Kim Jyotihi Tava. Please tell me, he asks his student, what is the light by which you see? And so the student answers immediately and he says, Gurudev, ahani me ratrau pradeepadikam. Ahani, during the day, for me, the light during the day for me is Bhanuman. Bhanuman ahani me. The light for me during the day is the light of the sun. I see because of the sun. Bhanuman. By the light of the sun, I can see objects during the day. And Ratrau, what about the night? Teacher says, Ratrau, what enables you to see during the night? He says, Pradeepadikam. I see at night because of my lamp and other sources of light. Pradeepadikam. So during the day I see because of the sun. At night I have a lamp that enables me to see. So teacher says, Syat eva. Very good, let it be so. Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidhau Kim Jyotihi Akhyati. But please tell me, Ravi, sun, Deepa, lamp, Darshana Vidhau, Kim Jyotihi. But what is the light that enables you to see the sun? So you say because of the sun you see, but what is the light? I'm asking you. Ravi Deepa Darshana Vidhau, Kim Jyotihi. What is the light because of which you see the sun and you see the lamp at night. Kim Jyoti. Tell me, what is that light? So the student says, Me Chakshu. That light is the light of my eyes. With my eyes, I see the sun. And I see the lamp and other sources of light at night. That's Chakshu. That's my eye. Because of that, I see. So the teacher is proceeding very beautifully with this interrogation. He knows exactly where he wants to take his student. So he says then after that, Nimila Nadi Samaye Kim. But my dear student, Nimila Nadi Samaye Kim. But if you close your eyes, Nimila Nadi Samaye, if I ask you to close your eyes, at the time of closing your eyes, what is the light because of which you know? Do you know when you close your eyes? Are you aware when you close your eyes? And what is that light because of which you see? So then he says, well, that light is my mind. Dhi. That light, when I close my eyes, I can see the sun, I can see the lamp, and I see with my mind. Uses the word here, dhi can also be intellect. And then this teacher says, dhi darshane kim. But you are aware of the thoughts in the mind. You are aware that, you think you see the lamp in your mind, but you are also aware of the lamp thought, the sun thought, whatever thoughts you have in your mind. You also see that. Dhi darshane, the mind is seeing. Kim, who sees? Who sees? And then the student says, Aham ataha bhavan, Guruji, Gurudev, I see. Atma sees. I am the light. I am the light because of which the mind sees. And so the teacher says, the teacher endorses what he says. Paramakam Jyotihi. You are that light. That is who you are. That's Chidananda. Chidananda is the Jyoti, the light, because of which the mind is seen, the sun is seen, all sources of light are seen. That is what you are. The Tattvamasi, Tatasmi Prabhu. I understand the student says that I am that. That is what I am. I thought I would start with this very beautiful conversation because of Jyoti, light, Diwali. We ought to be reminded that the ultimate light is the light of Chidananda, that because of which we even see the lights of Diwali. You see lights because we are light. And this is what we have been studying in so many ways, in so many verses of this poem by Shankara, Nirvana Shatkam. So in the vision of this poem, which is the vision of the Upanishads, the vision of the Vedanta, there is something, this is where I started, there is something about ourselves that we need to understand. There is some misunderstanding that has to be corrected. We are all subject to what I described as avidya or ignorance. And it's a peculiar ignorance because we don't know that we do not know. And so the purpose of this Nirvana Shatkam is the removal of ignorance about who we are. This teaching that we have studied is not in opposition the many ways in which we understand ourselves. When we give various answers to the question, who am I? What am I? As we have said, I may tell you my name, I will tell you my profession, I will tell you my nationality, I will tell you the various roles that I play in life: father, mother, brother, sister, friend, teacher, student. These are not wrong answers. They describe certain aspects of our identity. They identify certain roles that we play in life. It is not wrong to say, I'm a teacher, I'm a husband, I am a citizen of the United States. These are truthful answers that describe our identities from different perspectives. But what we are learning and what we need to learn, that there is something more, something even more fundamental about ourselves that we need to understand, that there is an ignorance that needs to be removed by right knowledge, by right teaching. And this culminates in the understanding that Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, that the truth of myself, the highest truth, the deepest truth, the ultimate truth of who you are and who I am is Chidananda Atma, Shivoham, Shivoham. And as we have studied in this poem, Nirvana Shatkam, Shankara uses the method of negation and affirmation in each verse. So the first 3 lines of each verse, he says what Atma is not. Manoo buddhi hankara chittani naham. Nacha srota jigve, nacha grana netra. Nacha vyoma bhumir, na tejo na vayu chidananda rupa. Shivoham, Shivoham. So as I explained, the first 3 verses is na, naham, what I am not, na aham. And so he begins by, identifying those characteristics, those characteristics of body and mind, etc., with which we identify ourselves. And after negating those wrong ways of thinking about ourselves, then he comes with the affirmation, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham. So the whole teaching is structured in this form of na aham, what I am not, and aham, what I am, which is the last line of each verse. Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham is at the very heart of this poem, the very heart of its teaching. This is what we have to take. This is what we have to keep. This one line, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham, Shivoham. So Chit, as I said, means, Chit is Jyoti. Chit is light. We translated Chit as awareness. Awareness is the light because of which we know our bodies, we know our sense organs, we know our thoughts, we know our memories. So the light of awareness, we may say, Jyoti, is Chidananda is Jyoti. Chidananda is the light because of which everything is known. Everything, as we said, is objectified. But that light, Chit, is also Ananda. So we have the compound, the Sanskrit compound, Chidananda. Ananda means that which is full, that which is complete, that which has no lack or limitation. Ananda also means Purnam, full, complete, without lack or want. We have that beautiful mantra from Upanishads, Purna Madav Purna Midam, Purnat Purna Mudachyate, Purnasya Purnamadaya, Purnameva Vashishyate. So Purna, Ananda is Purna, that which is free from the limits of time, limits of space, limits of smallness, free from all limits is Ananda. So this Chid Ananda in every body, every human body, every physical body is one and the same. There is no eye awareness, different eye awareness, air awareness, smell awareness, touch awareness, taste awareness. It is one undivided awareness that is present in all of the sense organs. You know, I don't think, when I see something, I don't think it's a different person who hears something. I am the seer, I am the hearer, I am the taster, I am the toucher. It's one awareness in the body, manifesting itself through all of the senses. But equally important is to understand that the awareness, which is the same one in my body, is identical in every body. This is also the heart of this teaching. Mad Atma, as we learn in Guru Stotra, Mad Atma, Sarva Bhut Atma. My awareness, my Atma, Chidananda that I am, Mad Atma, Sarva Bhut Atma, is the Atma of all. Chidananda is the one Atma of all beings. Mad Guru, Sri Jagat Guru, Mad Atma, Sarva Bhut Atma. That is the understanding. That has to be part of this wisdom. There's so many beautiful verses in other texts. You know, Sri Krishna uses the example to Arjuna of the sun, the one sun. Yatha prakashayat yeka krishnam lokam imam ravihi. Just as imam ravihi, this one sun, prakashayat yekam, lights up the whole of our universe, one sun. Ekaha ravihi, one sun lights up the entire universe. Kshetram kshetri tata krishnam prakashayati bharata. Similarly, Chidananda present, the one Chidananda present in all forms, in all bodies, is the one source of light, the one source of illumination. Sarvataf padam, sarvataf pani padam, tata, Bhagavad Gita teaches. It is present in all arms, in all legs, in all eyes, in all heads. Sarvataf pani padam tata sarvato shishiro mukam. Sarvataf sruti malloke sarvam avritya tishtati. But at various points during our study of Nirvana Shatkam, I tried to clarify a very important dimension of this understanding. If I teach, and if we understand, and we leave thinking that what this poem teaches is that there is a reality called Atma, Chidananda Atma, which is the self of all, and there is a mind, there is a body, there are sense organs, there is a world that is different from this Chidananda, then we will end up with a dualism. Not only do we end up with a dualism, which is the dualism of Atma, Chidananda Atma, and everything that is not Atma, Anatma, but then we cannot say that Chidananda Atma is Purnam. We cannot say it is without limits. Because to be Purna means infinite also. Infinite means without limits. So if in reality there is something other than Atma, then Chidananda Atma, it can't be Ananda. It can't be Purnam, because there is something other than Chidananda. We can't say that Chidananda is infinite, because it is limited by the fact that there are things which are different. There exists objects different from Chidananda. And this is why in the Upanishads, which we share, and this is something we have to keep thinking about. The Upanishad gives us the beautiful example of clay and clay pots. There are any number of clay pots. They vary in size, they vary in shape, but clay is one. The difference is name, nama, and form, rupa. So in a similar way, in this universe, there are countless objects, innumerable objects. But if we take any object that exists, the human body, the sun, the moon, the elements, if we look beyond its form and appearance, we understand that it is nothing but a form of Chidananda. We know this is not a very difficult teaching to understand. From all our study of the universe, by our great physicists, our great scientists, we know that reality, or we can say that the universe is not what it appears to be. At heart, things are different from what they appear to be. And so, we can take any number of objects that look very different in form and appearance and features. But when we begin to look more into the object, then the differences are few. They are fewer. A lot of differences in form and size and shape and color and texture. But when we look deeper into the nature of objects, they don't look very different. If we remove the skin from all our bodies will look very similar. So when we get to the ultimate nature of anything that exists, it is Chidananda. It is Chidananda. So we say that everything and everyone is a form of Chidananda. Chidananda with name and form. Every form is unique, every form is different, every form is beautiful. But Chidananda is the truth of every form, like clay is the truth of everything made of clay. So this is why, in this teaching, we are not negative. We should not negativize the human body. We should not negativize the universe or any object in the universe, because everything is a beautiful expression of Chidananda. Everything is a beautiful form of Chidananda. And Chidananda, as I said, Shiva, is the ultimate teaching is Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. So Shiva is Chidananda, but Chidananda with omniscience, Chidananda with omnipotent, Chidananda as creator, sustainer, as goal of all life. That's Shiva. But see how the last sentence is constructed, as I said, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. I am not omniscient, I am not omnipotent. That would be arrogant, an arrogance of me to say that. But Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. But as Chidananda, there is a unity between, or an identity between you and Shiva, between myself and Shiva as Chidananda. Even as a small clay pot can say, I am clay. At the same time, it can't hold the same amount of water as a huge clay pot, but its ultimate nature is also clay. They also give the example of waves and water. So this is important that we understand this. We do not negativize the universe in the Vedanta tradition. We embrace everything as forms of the one reality, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. This knowledge, as I tried at various points, in our discussion, I tried to emphasize that this knowledge is transformative. When we understand it, it makes a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, then we are not understanding. This knowledge has implications for us, and we looked at various verses. We looked at some of the implications of this knowledge, and Shankara also pointed some of those to us in various verses. Name lobha mohau. We remember that very beautiful verse. Name dvesha ragau, name lobha mohau, mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhavam. This is an example of a verse where he's speaking about the transformation of this understanding. Lobha, it frees from greed, not from need. We all have legitimate needs, but this wisdom liberates us from greed. Legitimate needs can be satisfied, but greed can never be satisfied. It liberates us from moha, which is confusion about who we are. Moha is ignorance. Name lobha mohau, mado naiva me naiva matsarya bhavaha. Mado naiva. Madaha is a feeling of superiority over others, and it leads to arrogance. Regarding one feels that in order to affirm one's value, one must put others down. One must diminish the value of others. This is what mada is a feeling of superiority based on diminishing the worth of another. Standing on another's shoulder to be high. But this knowledge neutralizes that kind of arrogance. Vidya vinaya sampanna. Bhagavad Gita says that wisdom always comes with humility. So it negates, neutralizes mada, matsarya. It also frees one from the negativities of jealousy. So we need, as we study this poem and we continue to think about it, to be aware also that while we are studying this text, this is a transformative teaching. Name mrityu shanka. It frees us from anxiety, from fear of death, that with death my existence will come to an end. And this is because Chidananda Atma is na janma na mrityu. It is not born, therefore it does not die. Death is for that which is born. Chidananda is free from birth, therefore it is free from death. We also spoke about the ways in which this wisdom transforms our relationships with others, and my comments about this came as a result of a question and thoughts that Prasannaji shared with others. Now, this knowledge of oneself as Chidananda Atma leads to a deep value for oneself. Bhagavad Gita says, na atmanam avasadhayet. One should not look down upon oneself. Na atmanam avasadhayet. Do not denigrate yourself. Embrace who you are, Chidananda Atma. But it also leads to a deep value and respect for other human beings. So value for oneself expresses itself in value for others, in affirming the worth of others. This is the beauty of this is, and this comes back to the point that I have been trying to emphasize, Mad Atma Sarva Bhutatma, the understanding that myself is the self of all. Mad Atma, myself, Sarva Bhutatma is the self of all, which means that I cannot value myself without valuing every other being. If I don't value other beings, then I'm still caught in ignorance. This is an expression of ignorance. So to value oneself is to value all beings, is to open your heart in compassion to all, because Chidananda is the one and the same in all beings. And as we saw, Name Jati Bheda, we should not classify human beings into categories of greater and lesser worth, regarding some as more worthy than others. No bhedas, whether these are bhedas of race, sex, nationality. This knowledge negates that. It transforms us by negating that kind of division. So finally, I think we should understand clearly that avidya, which this poem seeks to dispel or to remove, is a very deep-seated problem. And it has profoundly conditioned the way we think about ourselves. The overcoming of avidya does not always have the instantaneous results that we might wish for it. And this is why, sometimes in the teaching of the Vedanta, some examples are given. And these examples are very, very useful. But sometimes the examples also only go so far. So one of the very famous examples about avidya and the overcoming of avidya in the Vedanta tradition is an example that you might be familiar with, is a person mistaking a rope for a snake. So someone is walking along the road, sees an object before him, thinks that this is a snake and feels terrified of it. And then someone comes with a light and they approach the object and they see that it's not a snake, but it's a rope. And then the fear and anxiety disappears. So in that example, once you see that the object is not a snake, but a rope, it will never appear to you as a snake again. The problem is solved at that moment when the light is shed on that object. But in the case of avidya, atma avidya, ignorance about oneself, we are dealing with long established habitual ways of thinking. And even when we understand, we get some glimpses, through study as we are doing, we are still more than likely to become forgetful. Old habits are more than likely to assert themselves. If the people who are walking along the path sort of move the rope to one side, next day when they pass, they are not going to think that it's a snake. That problem is solved once and for all. But in this case, we can become forgetful, or old habits of mind will reassert themselves. They have long established themselves and they're not going to. We speak of these habits as vasanas. Vasanas, they're long habitual ways of thinking. So right knowledge, therefore, is a process. It requires sustained effort. It requires mindfulness. Because avidya is not only deeply established, but it's also it's sort of all pervasive. It has affected one's values, it has affected one's relationship. And so the transformation is as well a process. The process of replacing habitual ways of thinking with new ways of thinking is an ongoing process. And we should not feel bad about this. This is how this process works itself out. But I do want to emphasize that this knowledge is meaningful only when it is really transformative. And therefore, when we think of what transformation means for this wisdom, I think there are two ways in which we should think about it. One is freedom, we should ask ourselves, what does this knowledge free me from? Freedom from. So the poem talks a lot about that. Freedom from greed, freedom from envy, freedom from classifying people into categories of superior and inferior categories, freedom from anger, and so on. So we can give a long list of what wisdom frees us from. Freedom from fear of death, name mrityu shanka, and so on. But equally important, I want to emphasize, is that this knowledge also frees us for something. It frees us from, but also frees us for. And by speaking about freedom for, what I mean is that it frees us to be more compassionate. It is not only a negative freedom. Freedom from is a negative freedom. Freedom for is what I am speaking of as the positive dimension of freedom. To be compassionate, to be loving, to be generous, and so on. It's manifests itself much more in relationships. So, you have all of the beautiful verses and other texts again. I've been quoting Bhagavad Gita so many times. In the 12th chapter, Sri Krishna says, Adveshta Sarva Bhutanam, one who loves all beings. Maitra, who is compassionate. Karuna evacha, nirmamo nirahankara, samadukha sukha kshami. Forgiveness, kindness, friendliness, generosity to others. This wisdom frees us for all of these virtues. So not only does it negate certain negative qualities or traits, but it instills and nurtures in us new virtues, new values that will express themselves in our lives. So I think we need to keep in mind these two dimensions of freedom, of moksha. What does moksha free us from? But equally important, and we don't talk about it enough, is what does moksha free us for? What kind of being do we become? Because I am emphasizing this in this last class because the special characteristic of this wisdom that we have been studying is that I would say that it brings together knowing and being. So we have the very famous line from the Upanishads, Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. One who knows becomes. One who knows becomes. So there is a lot of things that we know that don't change us, that don't transform us. And I give you, we can think of so many examples. One example that I used a few classes ago, I said, we're learning about black holes and people get Nobel Prizes for understanding black holes. But black holes don't transform us. Our knowledge of black holes don't really transform us morally or transform us ethically. We don't have to become anything different when we study black holes. But here, knowing and being are inseparable. To know is to be. To know is to be. To know is to become. So we have to bridging this gap between knowing and being. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone. Whether you are a monk, a sannyasin, or you are a lay person like you or I, whether you are a grihastha, you are, in a householder, a marriage life, whether you are a student, a brahmachari, for all of us, we have to work to bridge this gap between what we know and what we are, what we know and who we are. You know, as we have seen, Dr. Sani has been teaching the Bhaja Govindam, and there are so many examples and verses that he has already shared, that changing the color of one's clothing, taking on a new name, living under a tree does not mean that one is transforming oneself. That greed, ignorance can still be very much present, even in the renunciant. This is a sincere, it's a lifelong journey, and one that must make us all humble. So finally, my final comment this morning is simply to remind us again, you know, the Upanishads speak of knowledge as a threefold process: Sravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. For these 9 classes, you know, we have all listened. This is Sravana. And, you know, we have all been reflecting on this poem, Manana. And now Nididhyasana is the process of that I just spoke about, of bringing together, uniting knowledge and being, knowing and who I am, knowing and who you are, the assimilation of knowledge, the transformation of knowledge, allowing this knowledge to work its way, you know, into our thoughts, into our words, into our actions in this world. I hope that for myself and for you, this process continues. This poem gives us everything, at least from a perspective of Vedanta, everything that we need to understand about ourselves. But the journey is a continuing one. It's an ongoing journey. And my prayer is that all that we have studied together in these 9 classes will bless you very deeply, very, very, very profoundly, and will bear rich fruits in your lives. So my intention is to stop here, and as I said, I will take the opportunity to invite your own thoughts. If you would like to just briefly offer at least one insight of this text that we have studied, you know, in these 9 satsangs, that you would like to lift up and share with all of us this morning, I welcome those contributions from you. So you will unmute yourself, and then you can briefly share with all of us. So we'll now open the session for your own reflections. I'm not inviting you to, and I don't want you at all to sort of praise me or Bodhi Satsangs Mighty. This is not what I am. Let me be very clear. I'm not asking you to do that, but simply just reflect on the last. Most of you have consistently been here for nine satsangs with us. What does this text mean to you? That's what I am asking. What have you received, taken deeply into your own hearts and minds from this? So you can just, Vijay ji, go ahead.
Yeah, interesting thing, and that actually we got right, or at least I did get right in the last 5 minutes or so, what you just said, which we had been, or at least I have been struggling with. This shloka is so beautiful, is what you said, from and for.
Mm-hmm.
That is so meaningful, because when we talk to anyone, oh, yeah, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this, it is not this. So people say, okay, so you're talking about negative, what is it? I said, well, it is awareness. What is awareness? All right, you know it's awareness, but what does it do to you?
Mm-hmm.
And that is what you just articulated so well, that all these awareness that I'm getting is to become something different. And that is my biggest takeaway from your discourses.
Thank you for that comment, Vijay. I would respond very briefly because I completely agree with you. Because generally speaking, if you ask someone, what is moksha? He or she will say, moksha is freedom from samsara, freedom from the cycle of birth and death and rebirth. But never, as you said, never speak about what is moksha freedom for. How does it transform us to live more richly in this world, here and now? That dimension we very rarely speak about. So, and that's, I'm glad that you lifted that. So thank you very much.
Well, namaste, Professor Anant. My takeaway from this, can you hear me?
Balaji, yes.
Yeah, my takeaway from this session of which has been so fabulous for the last so many weeks, specific ones are, maybe Vijay addressed it, but the way you separated the wisdom from versus wisdom for, it is something that I don't reflect, people don't reflect. So that was something that was quite interesting to me and something that I would really cherish that. Thank you very much.
I have a comment.
Nayana, go ahead.
Yes. Okay. You know, all that you have been talking about, all of these since June, you said, as well as Dr. Sane speaking of Bhajagovinda. Finally, I think there's just, to me, just one word that I'm trying to reach, which is transformation. The word you used just now, it is the for and the from, all of those is combined into what are we going to do to transform our lives after listening to all of this, you know, great wisdom. So, you know, to me, that's what I need to take away from this, because there has to be an action plan that involves, after listening to all of this, the knowledge and reflection and assimilation of that knowledge, etc. It boils down to your own personal transformation to me.
Yes,
What would you add?
Nayana. I just to add, you know, I think knowledge has to be fruitful, or else knowledge simply remains words. Knowledge becomes transformative, as you said, when knowledge becomes fruitful in our lives, when it makes us different from who we are now. And the difference is always in the direction of, you know, I think our tradition gives us many clues to judge this transformation, how to measure this transformation. And like whatever text we use, we'll see these very important clues. So Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, you know, Atma paumyena sarvatra sukham va yadi va dukkham. Are you growing in ways in which you experience greater compassion for those who suffer? Do you rejoice when others are happy? Para dukkha dukkha sukha sukha. Do you feel the suffering of the other? Do you share the joy of the other? In other words, is the self growing, expanding? You know, ignorance is a narrowness of self, a constricted self. One of the features of ignorance is a narrow self, a constricted self, a self that is identified, you know, with a particular community, a particular gender, but whatever you have, particular nation. Knowledge frees the self from these narrow limits. And this is what the word Mahatma means. You know, the ideal for in our tradition, you know, not only is it an ideal for few people, but to become a Mahatma is to become a person whose Atma is Mahan, Mahan Atma, which is what we're discussing here. You know, the understanding that myself is the self of all beings, and therefore the suffering of all is my own suffering also. I identify with it. This is the Mahatma ideal, which is one of the fruits of. And I thank you very much for that contribution.
Anandji.
Yes.
I just like to share a few points as well. And I'd like to say that the first time I heard these verses was actually 25 years ago when you did chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita at Diwali Nagar. And at that time, I distinctly remembered having a trigger in my mind over 2 lines out of these verses. Pita naiva me naiva mata na janma na bandhur na mitru guru naiva shishya. I have no father, no mother. I was never born. I am not a relative, nor a friend, nor teacher, nor student. And I remember sitting there in Diwali Nagar and having a lot of trouble in assimilating and coming to terms with these 2 lines. But I think that was a good thing because it allowed me to continue, and it sort of encouraged me as well to try to get a further understanding into these. And that built over the years. And I know there are so many lines and verses in this, but at that particular point in my life, you know, as a younger person, this was my identity. A relative, a friend, I have a mother, I have a father, I'm a student. But I think that knowledge grew as I explored further understanding, much of it from yourself as well. And last year, when I did some further studies in the Chandogya Upanishads, particularly with this discussion between Udalak Rishi and Shweta Ketu, I think that discussion from Chandogya Upanishad goes hand in hand with these verses, so much so that I think it brings the meaning out a lot. It brings it such that they are so closely aligned that it resonates and it cements the understanding. And I think that has actually worked for me. And then coming into these discourses over the past couple of months, it has helped further. I think over the years, since the first time I heard this 25 years ago, the transformation was that it allowed me to, as I understood more and as I researched more, the transformation was how I viewed everyone else, and not only people, but also the environment and also wildlife, everything. Your worldview sort of took shape, I would say, if I could use that synonym. But also over the years, I think both for Parvati and I, in addition to the self-transformation and the self-understanding, these verses particularly helped us in dealing with the loss of a loved one. And I think that helped tremendously over the years, because even if we look at these verses, if I was not born, then someone else who we love and grow up with and so on, it's the same for them. And in their passing, it helps to deal with that, given these verses and given these understandings. So I think, I just wanted to share that. And if people are hearing this for the first time, I would encourage people to not leave it here today, but keep reviewing these discourses and keep listening, keep reflecting, and keep assimilating, because every time you go back to it, something else comes in. And so I just wanted to share that with you.
Oh, that's very beautiful, Bobby, and I'm very happy that you were able to join us, both of you regularly from England. So it was very nice having you with us. And I'm glad you started off by focusing on that particular verse, Pita naiva me naiva mata na janma, because I think that, again, as you were suggesting, the question is, how does knowing myself as Chidananda Atma enrich my role as husband, as wife, not negating those roles, but enriching my role as father, as mother, as daughter, as son, as student, as teacher. What added value and insight does it bring? And as you said, the human predicament of dealing with mortality is also very important taking from a verse like Namrityushang. Not only our own mortalities, but what you're reminding us is the mortalities of those whom we love.
It is my favorite prayer, Anand ji.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
I think I know when I've understood I am Chidananda Rupa. That day will be when I show the same reverence to Trump as I do to Biden.
Oh my God. Big order.
That's when I really know I have understood Chidananda Rupa.
No, I think you put it in a very dramatic way, Professor Kumar. But at the same time, what you're saying is also has a very deep wisdom and truth, from as I understand it, because it doesn't mean that I should not be blind about who a person is. I should see how a vidya manifests itself deeply in the particular values or the mode of behaving that a particular person might exemplify. I don't have to approve of that. But at the same time, every human being, because of this truth, I think that's what deserves respect, even when we cannot agree with them. Respect does not mean agreement. The dignity of the human being doesn't mean that we have to agree with what they advocate or what they stand for. But it means that every human being is deserving of our respect, deserving of being treated with dignity, because of what we know is the truth of each person. So I think, you know, you make a very important observation, because that's where we are often most challenged, Prasanna ji. How do we respect those with whom we disagree profoundly? And we have to also see, when we say Sarva Bhuta Atma, we also have to see Chidananda Atma in those with whom we disagree. And if we do, perhaps, you know, perhaps we make more progress as a nation, as a community as well. So I thank you for putting it in that kind of very
Very stark.
Good. So first of all, thank you so much for imparting this knowledge. So this is kind of an absolute abstraction, if you may say, this neti, but like you described, there's also it's a way to go inside and transform ourselves. So I think this is probably a very unique aspect of Hindu religion. As far as I know, no other religion has this kind of abstraction along with the rituals that we have. So it's really along with the rituals where we have, these deities, and we, represent them with such opulence and things like that, right? So my question, Sir Rambachan, is that just yesterday I heard this webinar from Pandita Indrani from Trinidad. I wonder if you know of her. But she talked about the importance of rituals like Ram Leela. So how do these two go hand in hand? That you have this abstraction, and then you have all these rituals. And are we to take one or the other, or is it meaningful to have both? So that's really my question to you, Professor Rambachan.
It's a very good question. Then I will quote Shankara here. And in one of his compositions, Viveka Chudamani, he said, Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma. Chittasya Shuddhaye Karma, Natu Vastu Upalabdhaye. Vastu Tattva Vicharena, Na Kinchit Karma Koti Bihi. So there Shankara does not, he doesn't dismiss rituals, but he says that the purpose of rituals is chittasya shuddha, is the purification of the mind. When we perform these rituals, offering them to God, Ishwararpitam, na ichchaya kritam, and not perform them for egocentric purposes, Ishwararpitam na ichchaya kritam chitta shuddhakam mukti sadhakam. Then they lead to a purification of the mind, chittasya shuddhaye, which enables the mind then to become the instrument, mukti sadhakam, for the attainment of self-understanding. So rituals are very beautiful, and when done, as Bhagavad Gita and other texts Shankara teaches, when done with the right motive, they become part of the journey, part of the process. So I do not advocate, this sharp separation between the performance of rituals and wisdom. I think they are part of one holistic understanding. And that's my position on this. That we need the regularity and the sadhana of worship as part of this process. And eventually, of course, you need to have the satsang and the study that goes along as well. John, I think I saw your hand up.
Yes. I would like to share an experience from my scientific life that has always felt to me as a parallel to what many people experience in sort of a more spiritual context. And it was this, it happened in the early 70s, so quite a long time ago, on a walk that I took through the mountains in Washington State. I was on a long hike, and I was walking and walking and walking, and it was an easy trail, so my mind was wandering. And it wandered to the trees that I was walking among. And I got to thinking as a scientist that even though the trees are so different from me, we share a great deal. We share a lot of genes. There are biological, biochemical functions that are the same in me as they are in the trees. And that is a way in which we are the same, even though our overall form and our way of life are very different. And then came something quite extraordinary. Uncalled for in the sequence of thoughts came a very different way of grasping this relationship. It switched from an intellectual understanding to a sense of being connected, to a kind of hard to describe. People oftentimes speak of spiritual experiences as taking them out into the universe somehow. That is what happened to me by way of thinking about genes. It was think about genes, recognize unity, and all of a sudden, there was this amazing sense of being united, not only with the trees, but out into the cosmos. And it has always seemed to me that this is very akin to awakening experiences described in spiritual traditions. But I wanted to bring it up because for me, the immediate context was a scientific context. It didn't come from reading scripture. It came from the understanding that I gained personally from the science that I was studying and doing. And then an immediate implication, of course, is that if I and the trees share so much, then there's a reason why I care so much for the trees, why I advocate conservation, things like that. So that was my experience.
That's a very, very beautiful and insightful. Maybe sometime I will teach that conversation, but earlier Bobby from England had mentioned the Chandogya dialogue. And there is a very beautiful section of that dialogue where the father, who is a teacher, asks his student, his son, to bring him a seed of a tree. And then he asked his son to break that seed into tiny bits. And basically he wanted to show him his own unity with the seed and the tree. So it speaks in a very special way to what you just said, and maybe someday we will come to that conversation.
I have two thoughts, a question, some comments, and one of them is comes out because of what John just said, and the other one goes back to your amazing, this 7-8 sessions we had. It's been very profound, and I want to thank you very much. And one of the things that I'm involved in the world, currently at least, with some of my colleagues around the world, is that we have been saddened over the years with this nationalism that's creeping everywhere and dividing humanity rather than bringing us together. So for a long time, we've been part of this World Federation movement. And as such, one of the things we're trying to create is something like a world passport, an identity of a world citizen, a person being a citizen of the world, and so on. So when we think about these things, we're always trying to strategize. How can we get people all around the world to think in terms of, we are all citizens of the same place, and all these walls, these divisions of nations and countries and languages and cultures, they're all part of our heritage, and they're not like separating us from each other. And it seems to me this Nirvana Shatkam kind of provides a kind of a heart of that type of creating that kind of a feeling in all of us. And so the question I have is, how can one kind of transit from the spiritual wise distillation to forms of actions that allows us to actually achieve it in the physical, in the living kind of world that we have?
Bharatji, you have raised such important points, and I keep these now with me. Perhaps I will go into them in some depth, but just two quick comments. You come back now to asking us the question: how do we? You're right. I mean, Nirvana Shatkam is a Bheda breaking teaching, as you said. It's a Bheda breaking teaching. Whether those Bhedas are Bhedas of race, and in your case, you lifted up the Bheda of nationalism, which is becoming a big problem today in our world. The privileging of particular national identities over others, and not a discourse about a world community, as you are indeed asking us to consider, which would be, for me, the right direction, because our tradition does not, support such divisions. The ancient text we have, Vasudeva Kutumbakam. It's very important. The world is one family. It's very ancient Vedic teaching. The second point, which hopefully we can find some time in the future to take up, maybe as a topic which both you and John have raised, and for me is a very important dimension of this teaching, is the intersection between science and spirituality, science and religion. I must say, very briefly here, and I'll stop here, is one of the reasons why I continue to be sustained by this teaching, because I don't think that I think it's very, very much consistent with what we are understanding about the world through our scientific inquiries. The idea that at the heart of reality, there is not two. That as John says, when we go into the nature of reality, we come closer to a unified vision, which the Upanishads speak of as Brahman or Chidananda Atma, is something that is even only closer to the scientific viewpoint and not one that diverges from science. Because I'm one of those persons, Bharatji, who, I sincerely believe that, like Shankara himself, Shankara said in his Bhashya, that if 100 Upanishadic statements tell you that fire is cold, you cannot accept it because it is contradicted by all the evidence of the senses. You know, you're not obligated to accept religious truth that is contradicted by well-established sources of knowledge. And that's a very profound insight, you know, from the 6th century onwards, that we don't have to affirm religious truths that are unsustained by rationality and reason. But I don't think that the fundamental claims of the Vedanta have been refuted by anything that we are learning about the universe. So there's so much in what you have said, and hopefully perhaps we can go topically some point in time and just discuss some of these points that arise from your comment and also from John's comments. So let me thank you all for joining us. I just want to say to you, you know, whenever I sit to speak to you here, I'm always facing the portrait of my guru. And so I teach only with his blessings. And if this teaching has enriched you, it has only come through what I have received. I can share what I have received, and for which I am